Today, the Senate Judiciary Committee deadlocked along party lines on advancing the historic nomination of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the U.S. Supreme Court. And that forced another vote in the full Senate to move her nomination forward. She's expected to be confirmed possibly by the end of this week. And I want everybody to remember, Judge Jackson is both qualified and she has, most importantly, support across the political spectrum, including from conservative Republican judges and the country's largest police union. But Republicans on the Judiciary Committee, who all voted against her, they're really showing a talent for ignoring these basic facts. Let's take a look at Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham.
There have been 115 men and women who have served on the Supreme Court. If Judge Jackson is confirmed, I believe she will prove to be the most extreme and the furthest left justice ever to serve on the United States Supreme Court.
Judge Jackson has got a lot to be proud of. She's accomplished a lot in her life. She's a good person. I'm sure she's a great mother and very gifted person. She's fought hard to be where she's at in life. I'll vote no. I'm the first time I've ever voted against any Supreme Court nominee.
Graham, who just last year, supported Judge Jackson for the Federal Appeals Court, her current position, today made the same baseless claim as other Republicans that Jackson is, quote, hard left. But I want to call your attention, it's important, to how he said there that she's a great mother and a gifted person, which in this context almost sounded like a compliment. But he didn't mention that Jackson is a Harvard-trained federal judge who has been confirmed previously by the Senate 3 times. That's an important fact to know. Some Democratic senators, like Mazie Hirono and Cory Booker, though, called out the Republican treatment of Judge Jackson.
The relentless, unfounded, and trumped-up attacks that Judge Jackson has faced, despite her exceptional qualifications, is nothing but a ruse. A campaign to give Republicans cover for voting against such an historic nominee because she is so highly qualified.
I am hearing from people, not just black women, but particularly black women, who have been relating to me their stories about having to come into a room where you're more qualified than the people who are sitting in judgment of you and having to endure the absurdities of disrespect that we saw Judge Jackson endure. How qualified do you have to be, double Harvard? How qualified do you have to be clerking at all levels of the federal judiciary? How qualified do you have to be?
I was over here snapping. I was snapping and amening, and joining us to discuss, Aisha Mills, a political strategist, also Kimberly Atkins-Stohr, a senior opinion writer for the Boston Globe. And Aisha, I want to start with you because, you know, that Cory Booker clip and what he said about how the treatment of Judge Jackson really hit a chord with black women, I felt, dare I say, triggered from it, from the treatment of Judge Jackson. What was your reaction watching all of that?
Oh, Zerlina, girl, triggered isn't, I mean, that's probably the best word that we could use, but I don't even know that it gets to the visceral reaction we all have when we are highly educated, more degrees, more time spent just reading the life skills that we have of navigating indignities, period. And just being treated as if we are less than gives us the fortitude to show up in ways that half those people on that committee couldn't even imagine, Democrat or Republican alike. So I was thankful, first of all, how I was feeling about this. I was so excited that Senator Cory Booker stepped up on behalf of all of us. And he really, really gave such an impassioned talk about how meaningful and historic this moment is. And I really appreciate him for that, sadly, because if a woman says it, it often isn't heard in the same way that a man does when he gives praise. So kudos to him for stepping up on all of our behalves. But I have to say, last thing I'll say is that, you know, these Republicans have not made up any excuses as to why anyone should not like her. And that's the thing that's particularly triggering. There's nothing wrong with her. As you have said in your introduction, she is highly qualified, but they can't come up with any reason to dislike her. They just do. And that's something that I think so many of us black women experience time and time again.
Kimberly, how do you hear them expressing their opposition. I mean, we learned today, and also last week, Susan Collins had announced she's going to vote for Judge Jackson. Lisa Murkowski just announced she'll vote for Judge Jackson. So that's 2 Republicans. It's interesting that it's 2 women Republicans, but I'm curious what you think about basically the Republican opposition saying the quiet parts out loud. Like, she's great, she's terrific, she has all the qualifications, but no, we can't vote for her, which I hear is like, she's black. I mean, what do you hear?
Yes, what I hear is it sounds like some of the members of this panel might be realizing the fact that they look very much like they're standing on the wrong side of history when there is someone who is eminently qualified, more popular than any other Supreme Court justice nominee in recent history, and has already been confirmed by the Senate multiple times. You could not have picked a more perfect candidate on the president's part. The president could not have picked a more perfect candidate for this role. And they're bending over backwards trying to explain why they are opposing her. I think Americans see it. I think Americans beyond Black women see this. But what they are carrying out is a political ploy. They see the courts, all of them, the federal judiciary, as the goal. They are laser focused in shifting them to the right, and they are trying to find whatever excuse they can to vote against this eminently qualified candidate. You even had Lindsey Graham essentially threatening, if Republicans retake control of the Senate, to, it sounded to me, block any other eminently qualified candidate like this that Joe Biden puts forward in the last 2 years of his first term. So this is political. I do believe that it's also clearly you see race. We've seen race throughout the confirmation hearings. We've talked about this. I've written about this. How many times Black women have had to sit and in all of their qualifications, in all of their hard work, in all of their accolades, and listen to people who have not reached the levels that they have, judge them on how they ought to be. We saw Judge Jackson handle that with aplomb. We saw her dignity. She should have had the bandwidth to be able to use a fraction of the indignation that we saw Justice Kavanaugh have during his confirmation hearings when he was accused of a crime. But she didn't have that space. But she will get on that court. And these lawmakers who voted against her will have that on their record for history, for the sake of history.
I mean, the piece about dignity is something I've been thinking a lot about in the context of what we're watching in Ukraine, also in the context of the treatment of Judge Jackson, because Aisha, for me, it feels like that's always really the fight. And at the core of everything is everyone deserves human dignity, no matter who they are, right? And so I feel like that's just fundamental. I thought everybody was in agreement on that point. I mean, I didn't really think that. That's more rhetorical. But what's so scary, Aisha, about having a Black woman on the Supreme Court? It feels to me like there's been a lot of resistance to something that shouldn't be scary unless you realize what it actually means to have that type of representation in a way we've never had it before.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, this is what we've been seeing in this modern era of politics, is that Republicans generally are scared of something. At least they claim that they're fearful. I don't even want to give them the credit to claim that they are fearful or that they are, scared of a person, because they use that as an excuse to really wrap their bigotry and bias and just straight ignorance and racism in this cloak of fear, right? Cops are afraid, so they're shooting Black people. We're afraid of the Black woman, so we don't want her on the court. At the end of the day, I think that this is really political. It's all political. Absolutely, she reflects and represents a part of the Democratic Party that hasn't had a voice up at the Supreme Court, and just a part of America, right? As a Black woman who herself watched her parents put themselves through school, right? She has fortitude, she has dignity, not because it's something that you're supposed to have in order to get far, but because she got home training. And I think that the thing that we should be talking more about is why why is it that women generally, certainly Black women, are held to this standard where we have to show up with decorum, with dignity, with some sense of biting our lip, which is really what those words ultimately mean, when white men can wild all the way out? And that seems heroic and powerful. Just like, was just mentioned, Brett Kavanaugh, all the pictures of him literally spewing venom at sitting members of the U.S. Senate that were literally responsible for putting him on the Supreme Court. He cursed them to filth in the best way he could sitting in those hearings. And people were proud of him, and he looked like he was being a man. But she couldn't even defend herself against lies and deceit, right? Her own words were being thrown up on a billboard to be used against her and misconstrued with just disinformation and just lies. And she had to smile through it. I think that the double standard here is what's so just infuriatingly problematic, and the fact that they couldn't come up with anything but praise and then still say, but I'm not going to vote for her, just shows how shallow and shameful the opposition has been up there.
It reminds me of sort of the large scale example of I'm sure you can relate to this experience where somebody is telling you how qualified and great you are, but you're still not going to get the job. You're still not going to get this thing. We're still going to give it to somebody who's traditionally been the type of person who gets this particular position, even though you're great. You're great. Just go do more and then come back and ask, but we're still going to just, I think that's the universal thing that I think Black women saw when they watched these hearings. Aisha Mills and Kimberly Atkins Store, it's so great to have you. Hi, I'm Zerlina Maxwell. Thanks for checking out our channel on YouTube. You can see more from Zerlina by clicking any of the videos on this screen, and make sure you subscribe below to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. Thanks for watching.